Simon, a very good morning to you. And this is a story that you broke. Give us a quick idea as to how this happened. What did you find out?
Well, I was contacted by a source who was close to the process, who told me that this was happening. I then spent a bit of time trying to verify it, and the actual text of the notice of withdrawal was sort of doing the rounds in United Nations circles by that point. So I was able to confirm the veracity of the letter. The South African government has still not actually confirmed or denied their intention to withdraw from the ICC. There is a press conference scheduled for 10 o'clock this morning, and the Minister of Justice will be delivering a message in which he is expected to confirm that decision.
Just take us back for those who don't remember, Simon. I mean, this all sort of came up at the time of Omar al-Bashir's visit here last year, and just how this actually sparked this entire, well, bringing us to the point where we are today.
So Omar al-Bashir's visit was only really one of the two main factors that have led to this moment where we are now. And of course, the Sudanese president came to South Africa for the African Union summit. We were supposed to arrest him because he's wanted for war crimes by the ICC, and we chose not to, saying that Bashir had diplomatic immunity as a head of state. This is a very legally contentious argument and was immediately challenged in court. Nonetheless, we let Bashir return to Sudan. And this really set in train the sort of internal domestic machinations against the International Criminal Court. We saw statements from the ANC saying we should withdraw, so it has been on the agenda for some time. But at the same time, there's been a growing Pan-African movement, led especially by Kenya. Of course, Kenya's president and deputy president were also charged by the ICC until those charges were dropped last year. And that movement is really gathering steam, and we've seen Burundi withdraw earlier.
Simon, are you still there?
There was a very, very serious worry that this could kickstart a domino effect whereby other African countries then also leave the ICC.
Simon, just looking at what's the general feeling out there. I mean, you deal a lot with African affairs stories coming out of the continent. What is the general feeling as to why African countries would take this stance? It almost would lead others to think that there's a sort of protective net being thrown over leaders, some of whom, rightly so, have a lot to answer for.
Look, there is a sort of argument amongst the people who are not supportive of the ICC, saying that the ICC is biased against Africans and African leaders in particular. And, if you look at the sort of statistics without any context, that might make sense because most of the cases in front of the ICC are African. I think actually all of them are. But the reason that this is so is actually because those cases were referred by African countries themselves for the most part. So it's not really fair to say that the ICC has targeted Africans. And also, it puts you in the company of some rather unpleasant people if this is a position you choose to support. People like President Bashir of Sudan, Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, who was certainly implicated in Kenya's post-election violence, Pierre Nkurunziza of Burundi, who has been doing some very nasty things to his people in a bid in power over the last year or so. So I that the sentiment against the ICC is very much being driven by an African leadership looking to protect themselves first rather than their people.
I suppose, Simon, many people wondering this morning as to how it affects them, and is this a good or a bad thing for South Africa to be doing, simply?
Absolutely. There's a point we should raise first, which is that this may not stick because there's a great deal of uncertainty about how South Africa is legally allowed to withdraw and whether it requires approval from Parliament first. Most civil society organizations that I've spoken to are convinced that this decision to withdraw will not withstand a legal challenge, and they are planning to mount that legal challenge urgently. So it could be that Parliament's approval is required, in which case that notice to withdraw doesn't actually stand. So perhaps we shouldn't worry too much about the long-term implications until we know for sure whether we withdraw it.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much. Daily Maverick's Simon Allison, he broke the story of South Africa and its intention to leave the International Criminal Court.